Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have my screen back, and if we can get councillors to resume their seats, please. Oh, sorry, that's my cup of there, Stu. Right, we come to item number 12 on our agenda, and this is something that's, I know, a routine part of the re-election of both the governing body and the local boards. But it is actually very important, and I hope everybody's had the chance to read an outline of the legislation, including the Secret Commissions Act 1910. You might say it stood the test of time, but the legislation that binds us is important, and we have obligations that often go to personal liability. So it is really important that every member of the governing body is aware of what those obligations are. So I'd like to first of all welcome Dani Gardner and Meredith Webb to the table, and I would also like to move the formal recommendation that we note the general explanation of the laws affecting elected members, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bill Cashmore. And it's my pleasure to ask Meredith or Dani, who's leading, one or other, to talk to us.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Local Government Act 2002 requires that at the first meeting following the three-yearly local election, elected members receive a general explanation of the laws affecting them as elected members. This report, the report on the agenda today, provides you with that explanation. There are a number of laws that affect you individually as elected members, and also a core legal framework that concerns your collective decision making. That legal framework we have set out for you in the attachment to the report. Meredith will very briefly at a high level give you an overview of that legal framework now. We don't propose to go through that in a great deal of detail today, given that it is in the written report, and further we had a kura kawana training session for you last week, which was very well attended by the majority of you. If there's any of you that missed that session and would like a more detailed explanation, please get in touch with me, and we're happy to have a one-on-one or a smaller group session. Before I hand over to Meredith, I will just say that there were a number of questions raised at that session last week and issues for us to follow up on, and those have all been recorded, and we are actively following up on those, and we will revert to you to the extent that they require a response. So I'll hand over to Meredith Webb, now the manager of the public law team.
Thank you, Dani. Oh, my clicker is not working. Can I get you to turn it on? That was a good... Yes, it is working. So Dani explained this. If I just move on to the next one.
Meredith, can you just bring your microphone down a little bit so we can hear you a bit more easily? Thank you.
Sure. Yes. Here we go. It's just slightly delayed. So as Dani said, just a very high-level overview of these, given the presentation most of you have already attended. So we have the list up there on the slide of the laws that affect you in your individual capacity. So starting with the Members' Interests Act, that deals with any financial interests you may have. Then the Crimes Act and the Secret Commissions Act, those deal with bribes and improper financial gains. The Financial Markets Conduct Act and the NZX listing rules. Those apply because Council lists bonds on the New Zealand Stock Exchange. They prevent you from trading in those bonds and impose obligations on you if you are asked to authorise information which is being shared with the market. The Health and Safety at Work Act establishes health and safety duties for Council and for people in positions of leadership, responsibility and influence within Council, including elected members, to protect the health and safety of workers. Then we note the provisions in the Local Government Act relating to council losses, In respect of those, there are various defences available to you, and we spoke about those at the training. We also note the requirement that the Auditor General must issue a report before such a finding can be made. Moving on to the laws that affect you collectively. First, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act, which, as it suggests, applies to the provision of information and conduct at meetings. We then have the Local Government Act 2002, which sets out the general framework for all local authorities, including both the purposes of local government and the requirements around decision-making for council decisions. The Auckland Council Act, which establishes Auckland Council as a unitary authority and sets out its shared governance structure between local boards and governing body. The next bullet point relates to the fact that there are many statutes under which you take decisions, such as the RMA and the Reserves Act, for example, which set out their own decision-making requirements with which you must comply. And of course, the overarching general public law principles which require you to act lawfully, fairly and reasonably. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is a very quick summary and an overview in light of the detailed report and the training that we've already provided. We are, though, always ready and willing to help with any queries you may have. So if you need legal advice on any particular decision or issue, or if you would like that training in more detail, please feel free to contact Danny or I or the legal services team directly at that email address set out on the slide.
Thank you very much, Meredith and Danny. Are there any questions? Councillor Walker.
There are a few issues that I raised when we had the meeting a short time ago, and in the main it went to the relationship between the Auckland Council, and in particular the governing body, and the council-controlled organisations. And essentially the advice that I'd like is around the legal relationship, because obviously ultimate accountability rests with the Auckland Council and the governing body, even in a situation where we've got CCOs reporting to us. So my concern is, what is the relationship between us, and that is as governing body, and the various acts that apply to us, relative to the relationship with the council-controlled organisations? Because obviously, if we are the ultimate authority and we have a range of things that bind us, then that binding process also, in some ways, goes to the council-controlled organisations. I don't need an answer to that right now, but I'm just putting on the table, Mr. Mayor, that there are some complexities that we as councillors need to get our heads around, and that may also help our relationship with the council-controlled organisations so that they have more of an appreciation of the role that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to comment on that at this stage?
Thank you. Through the chair. Yes, we did record your questions around that at the training session, and I agree that there is complexity to the relationship and the legal relationship between the council and the CCOs. There are provisions in the Local Government Act, the Local Government Auckland Council Act, and what we thought was that perhaps a specific session on that framework relating to CCOs might be appropriate, and that could be given in the context of the CCO review, if that's appropriate.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If there are no further questions, are there any comments? If there are no comments at this point, I think most of us have been through one or other briefings on this, but not to diminish the importance of it. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. We come